We all know those foods that get tagged as superfoods, right? They promise all sorts of incredible benefits.
Mm.
And for many, blueberries are right up there. These little blue gems, we hope, are secretly boosting everything, especially our brain power.
It's a, it's a really tempting idea as we think about staying sharp, as we get older.
Yeah,
The thought that something as simple and tasty as berries could make a real difference is definitely attractive.
absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, specifically for you, our listener, who's wondering if blueberries can truly give your mental abilities a boost.
Hmm.
You're looking for natural ways to support your brain health without feeling, well, overwhelmed by all the information out there. So, our goal is clear. Let's explore the science behind the blueberry hype and see what the evidence really says.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be focusing on what makes blueberries potentially so beneficial, particularly as those antioxidant compounds called anthocyanins. We'll look at the research that's investigated how blueberries might impact our cognitive function, and, we'll discuss how they fit into the broader picture of maintaining a healthy mind as we age.
Because let's face it, the idea of our mental sharpness declining as we age, well, it's something most of us have probably considered.
For sure.
Maybe it's that moment you struggle to remember a name or you just don't feel quite as mentally quick as you once did. It's natural to look for solutions.
Yeah,
And the thought that something you can easily include in your diet, like blueberries, could be a natural way to help with that is pretty exciting.
it is. And to really understand if blueberries can be helpful, it's useful to first have a basic understanding of what naturally happens to our brains as we get older.
Okay.
Knowing the process kind of helps us see where blueberries might actually have a positive role to play.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
When we talk about cognitive aging, what are the actual biological processes happening in our brains? What's going on?
Well, it's a complex process that starts surprisingly early, actually. Even in our 30s, our brains begin a very, very gradual process of shrinkage.
Really? In our 30s?
Yeah, gradual, but it starts, and this tends to become more noticeable after age 70. We're generally looking at a volume decrease of around 5% per decade after we turn 40.
Wow. Okay.
And certain brain regions are more affected than others, particularly the prefrontal cortex.
Which does.
That's critical for those executive functions,
Mhm.
like planning and decision-making,
Yeah.
and also the hippocampus, which is essential for memory formation.
So the very parts of our brain responsible for higher level thinking and memory actually start to undergo physical changes.
Precisely. And it's not just about the physical size either.
Mm.
On a cellular level, the connections between our brain cells, the neurons, well, they can become less efficient. This is known as reduced synaptic plasticity, basically. The ability of these connections to adapt and strengthen, which is fundamental for learning and creating new memories.
Ah.
Think of it like the pathways for information in our brain becoming a little less flexible over time.
That makes sense. It's like the brain's ability to form new connections and adapt starts to slow down a bit.
Yeah.
But it's not just a matter of age alone, right? Other things play a role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our lifestyle choices have a significant impact on how our brains age. Things like a poor diet, not getting enough exercise, chronic stress, inadequate sleep, they can all accelerate that natural process of cognitive aging.
Right.
And then, of course, there are genetic factors and conditions like Alzheimer's disease, which unfortunately affect a large number of people. Like the projection for 2025 is over 6 million Americans.
That's huge. And we often hear about oxidative stress. How does that relate to the aging brain?
Oxidative stress is, yeah, it's a key factor. It's essentially an imbalance in our bodies between harmful molecules called free radicals
Okay.
and protective substances called antioxidants. Free radicals are a natural byproduct of our metabolism, just, living and breathing.
Right.
But they can damage our cells, including the neurons in our brain. And this damage can lead to inflammation and impair how our neurons function over time.
So it's like these tiny damaging particles are sort of bouncing around, causing cellular wear and tear in the brain. And what are the practical effects of this cognitive decline that we might notice in our daily lives?
Initially, the effects can be quite subtle. It might be those brief moments of forgetfulness, misplacing keys, struggling to find the right word.
We've all been there.
Exactly. But as it progresses, it can lead to more noticeable difficulties with tasks that require problem solving, managing multiple things at once, overall mental agility.
Okay.
And some older adults may develop something called mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. That's important because a certain percentage of people with MCI, maybe 10–15% per year, can go on to develop dementia, including Alzheimer's.
That's a sobering thought. And it's not just about these medical terms, is it? It really affects how we experience our lives, our quality of life.
Exactly. Even what we might consider normal cognitive aging can impact our quality of life. It can make it more challenging to stay actively engaged with the world, maybe learn new things, even maintain our social connections.
Yeah.
That AARP survey from last year really highlighted this. It showed something like 80% of adults over 50 are concerned about maintaining their mental sharpness.
Wow, 80%. That's a huge majority.
Yeah.
So, with all these natural changes happening in the brain as we age, how does our diet come into play as a potential way to, well, protect it?
Diet is increasingly recognized as a really powerful tool for supporting brain health as we age. The Mediterranean diet, for
I
example.
thought about that word.
Yeah, it's rich in things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats. And it's been consistently linked in research to slower rates of cognitive decline and a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease.
How much lower?
Some studies suggest a potential risk reduction of around 20% for Alzheimer's with that type of dietary pattern.
That's a pretty significant impact just from changing what we eat. And what are the specific components of these diets that seem to be so beneficial for the brain? Are there key nutrients?
Yeah, certain nutrients really stand out. Things like omega-3 fatty acids, which you find in fish,
Mm.
B vitamins present in leafy greens, and very relevant to our discussion today, antioxidants.
Ah, the antioxidants again.
Yes, which are found in high concentrations in berries like blueberries. The key role of antioxidants is their ability to neutralize those damaging free radicals we talked about earlier,
Right.
thereby reducing oxidative stress and inflammation in the brain.
Okay, so that gives us the background. Now we can really focus on blueberries. They get a lot of buzz as a brain food precisely because of these antioxidants. What exactly makes them so special in this regard?
Well, first, let's look at their credentials as a superfood, so to speak.
Yeah.
Blueberries are actually native to North America.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they have a long history of use by indigenous peoples, not just as food, but also for traditional medicinal properties. Today, they're cultivated globally, and the U.S. is a major producer. I saw a figure of over 680 million pounds harvested in 2024.
Wow, that's a lot of blueberries.
Yeah.
And in terms of nutrition, what does a typical serving offer us?
Okay, so a cup of blueberries, which is about 148 grams, is relatively low in calories, around 84, but it packs a good amount of fiber, about 4 grams.
Good for digestion, too.
Exactly. And it's a significant source of vitamin C, vitamin K, and manganese. But as we've been hinting, the real standout feature when it comes to brain health is their high concentration of antioxidants, particularly a type called anthocyanins.
Anthocyanins.
These are the natural pigments that give blueberries their distinctive, deep blue-purple hue.
So the color itself is a clue to their power. That's interesting. Tell me more about these anthocyanins. What do they do?
Right, so anthocyanins belong to a larger group of plant compounds known as flavonoids. They're not just responsible for the vibrant colors in many fruits and vegetables, they also have significant anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective properties.
Neuroprotective, brain protecting.
Exactly. And when you compare blueberries to other common fruits, they really shine in terms of antioxidant levels. There's this measure called an ORAC score.
Right, I've heard of that.
It measures antioxidant capacity. And blueberries' score is notably higher than, say, strawberries or apples. Blueberries score nearly 4,700, whereas strawberries are around 3,100, apples maybe 2,800. So it suggests a more potent defense against those brain-damaging free radicals.
That puts it into perspective. So we know they're packed with these beneficial compounds. How do these anthocyanins actually work to support our brain health, like mechanistically?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. As we discussed, the brain is particularly susceptible to oxidative stress, partly because it uses so much oxygen, right?
Right, that 20%.
Yeah. So blueberries appear to offer protection through several mechanisms. Firstly, those anthocyanins have this remarkable ability to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Okay, that's key.
It is. Think of that barrier as the brain's security system. These compounds can actually get through and accumulate in key areas, like the hippocampus, the memory center.
Wow.
Once they're there, they're believed to enhance the communication between neurons, basically making those connections stronger and more efficient. That's the improved synaptic plasticity we talked about.
Which is vital for learning and memory.
Absolutely.
So they're not just floating around, they're actually getting into the brain and working at a cellular level. That's fascinating.
Exactly. And the potential benefits don't seem to end there. Blueberries have also been shown in some studies, particularly animal studies, to stimulate neurogenesis,
Which is?
the growth of new neurons, specifically in the hippocampus. This process naturally slows down as we age, so anything that can help support it is potentially a significant benefit for maintaining cognitive function.
Any specific evidence for that?
Well, there was a study in 2019 on rats that found a substantial increase, around 30%, in a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor,
Okay, BDNF.
in the brains of rats fed a blueberry-enriched diet. You can think of BDNF as sort of like fertilizer for brain cells, helping them grow and stay healthy.
Wow, 30% increase is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And it sounds like blueberries might also be helping to maybe keep things calm in the brain, inflammation-wise.
That's right. They seem to help reduce inflammation by lowering the levels of certain pro-inflammatory markers, cytokines. Chronic inflammation in the brain can be really harmful to brain cells, so this anti-inflammatory effect is another important way blueberries might contribute to cognitive health.
Okay, so the science behind why blueberries could be good for the brain seems quite promising. The mechanisms make sense. But what does the actual research in humans tell us? Have studies shown that eating blueberries actually leads to improved cognitive function?
Yes, and that's the crucial part, right? There's a growing body of research in humans that supports these potential benefits. A significant study from 2010, it was published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry,
Okay.
looked at older adults, 65 to 80, who had mild cognitive impairment, that MCI we mentioned.
Right.
For 12 weeks, they consumed a daily blueberry supplement equivalent to about 1 cup of fresh blueberries.
And the results.
The researchers observed significant improvements in their memory and learning abilities. The blueberry group scored about 15% higher on verbal memory tests compared to a group that got a placebo.
15%. That seems quite meaningful.
Could be, yeah. And they also used brain imaging and found increased activity in the prefrontal cortex in the blueberry group, which suggests an improvement in those executive functions like planning and decision-making.
That's really encouraging. A 15% improvement in verbal memory. I mean, that could definitely have a noticeable impact on someone's daily life, right? Less likely to forget names or details.
Exactly. And there are other studies that support these findings. A longer-term study from 2016, this one was in the European Journal of Nutrition.
Okay.
It followed over 1,200 adults for 2 decades,
Yeah.
20 years.
Wow, that's long term.
It is. The researchers found that people who regularly ate blueberries, defined as at least twice a week, had a 25% lower risk of experiencing age-related cognitive decline compared to those who rarely consumed them.
25% lower risk.
Over 2 decades, yeah. Simply adding blueberries a couple of times a week showed a really significant protective effect, it seems. That's a pretty low lift for a potentially big reward for our brain health down the line.
A 25% lower risk over that long a period is a pretty compelling statistic.
It is. And then there was a 2022 meta-analysis. These are useful because they pull data from multiple studies.
Right. Gives a bigger picture.
Exactly. This one looked at 16 different studies involving over 5,000 participants. And it concluded that blueberry consumption was associated with, on average, a 10% improvement in delayed memory recall and an 18% reduction in the risk of dementia in older adults.
So it seems like the benefits aren't just short-term memory boosts. There's evidence pointing towards longer-term protection as well. And what about younger people? You mentioned a study on children earlier.
That's right. A 2018 study examined children ages 7 to 10. They found that consuming a blueberry smoothie, I think it was about 200 grams of blueberries, led to a 12% improvement in their reaction times on cognitive tasks within just a couple of hours.
Really? Just hours later.
Yeah, which suggests that blueberries might offer both immediate, sort of acute benefits, as well as those longer-term cognitive benefits across different age groups.
That's fascinating. Almost like a little mental boost in the short term alongside the longer term protective effects. But I know with any research, it's important to look at the full picture. Are there any limitations or, things to keep in mind when we consider these studies, caveats?
Absolutely. It's crucial to have a balanced perspective. While the research is definitely promising, there are limitations to acknowledge.
Such as?
Well, many studies, particularly some of the earlier intervention trials like that 2010 MCI study, involved relatively small numbers of participants.
Okay, small sample sizes.
Right. Which can make it more difficult to be certain that the findings apply robustly to the broader population. Also, the duration of many intervention studies is often relatively short, maybe 12 weeks, 16 weeks.
Right.
This makes it harder to fully understand the long-term impact of consistently eating blueberries over many, many years or decades.
That makes sense. It's challenging to capture the effects of decades of dietary habits in just a few months.
Exactly. And often these studies have limited control over other aspects of the participants' diets. It's difficult to perfectly isolate the specific effect of blueberries when people might also be eating other healthy fruits and vegetables or, generally following healthier eating
Good
patterns.
point. Confounding factors.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And in those studies that show more immediate effects, like the one with children reacting faster,
Yeah.
it's also possible that short-term increases in blood sugar after consuming the smoothie, or even just a placebo effect believing it will help, could be playing a role, rather than solely the direct action of the blueberry compounds on brain function.
Ah, okay. Need to consider those possibilities too. And I've heard that even when we eat healthy foods, our bodies don't always absorb all the beneficial compounds efficiently. Is that a factor with blueberries and anthocyanins?
Yes, that's another important consideration: bioavailability. While we know anthocyanins can cross the blood-brain barrier, evidence suggests only a relatively small percentage of the anthocyanins we ingest actually gets absorbed into the bloodstream in their original intact form.
So where does the rest go?
Much of it is broken down by gut bacteria or metabolized by the body into other compounds. And we're still learning about whether these metabolites, these breakdown products, have the same neuroprotective effects as the original anthocyanins.
Okay. More research needed there.
Definitely. Additionally, the optimal amount, the sort of dose of blueberries for cognitive benefits, seems to vary in the research. Studies have used different amounts, ranging anywhere from around 100 grams, which is less than a cup, up to 500 grams per day.
Big range.
Yeah. So it's not quite a one-size-fits-all prescription, and there's still more to understand about how our individual bodies utilize these compounds effectively.
So it's not just about eating blueberries, it's also about how our individual bodies process them and maybe what else we're eating.
Precisely. And that brings us to a really vital point. Blueberries are just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to brain health.
Right, not a magic bullet.
Exactly. They're likely to be most effective when they're part of a broader dietary pattern that supports cognitive function. We mentioned the Mediterranean diet. There's also the Mind diet.
My mean diet.
Yeah, it combines aspects of the Mediterranean and Daesh diets, and it specifically emphasizes foods thought to be good for the brain, including berries, nuts, fish, leafy greens, whole grains.
And has it shown results?
Yes, quite significant ones. Research suggests that strict adherence to the Mind diet can lower the risk of Alzheimer's disease by over 50%.
Wow, 50%, that's huge.
It is. It really highlights that it's probably not just about adding one specific food, but about the overall synergy, the whole way we eat.
That's a powerful statistic. So it's not just about adding blueberries in isolation, but thinking about them within that whole dietary pattern.
Exactly. Blueberries likely work synergistically with other brain-boosting foods. Think about walnuts, which are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, or spinach, which is a good source of folate. These different nutrients can support brain health through various pathways, complementing each other.
And of course, it's not just about what we eat, right? Our overall lifestyle plays a massive role as well. Can't just eat blueberries and sit on the couch all day.
Absolutely not. We can't overlook the importance of other lifestyle factors. Regular physical exercise, for instance, has been shown to increase levels of that BDNF protein we talked about.
The brain fertilizer.
Exactly. Which directly complements the potential brain-boosting effects of blueberries. Getting enough quality sleep is also crucial.
Why sleep specifically?
Well, during sleep, our brains consolidate memories and clear out metabolic waste products, toxins that build up during the day. Adults who consistently get less than 7 hours of sleep per night have been found to have a significantly higher risk, maybe around 30% higher risk of cognitive decline.
Okay, sleep is non-negotiable then.
Pretty much. And finally, engaging in mentally stimulating activities, learning new skills, playing musical instruments, doing puzzles, even social interaction can help build what's called cognitive reserve.
Cognitive reserve.
Yeah, it's like building up the brain's resilience, making it better able to withstand the changes that come with aging. So yes, blueberries are a valuable tool, but they work best in combination with a healthy lifestyle overall.
So blueberries are a potentially valuable tool, but they work best in concert with a whole healthy lifestyle package. That makes a lot of sense. Now, for you, our listener, who's maybe keen to incorporate more blueberries into their diet after hearing this, what are some practical and importantly delicious ways to do that?
Oh, there are so many easy and enjoyable ways. Smoothies are a fantastic option. Really popular.
Yeah, quick and easy.
Totally. You can blend them with things like bananas, maybe some spinach for extra greens, yogurt or kefir, almond milk. A really nutrient-packed start to the day.
Good idea hiding spinach in there.
Works every time. They also make a wonderful topping for oatmeal or yogurt bowls, maybe with a drizzle of honey or maple syrup and some chia seeds or nuts for crunch.
Nice. What about just snacking?
Absolutely. Snacking on a handful of fresh blueberries by themselves is great, or pair them with some almonds or walnuts for some healthy fats and protein. Keeps you full longer too.
Smart.
You can even get creative. Add them to salads, like a spinach salad with walnuts, feta, and a balsamic vinaigrette. The blueberries add a nice burst of sweetness.
Ooh, I like that idea.
Or layer them in parfaits with yogurt and granola for a healthier dessert option. Lots of possibilities.
Those all sound pretty appealing and actually quite easy to integrate into daily meals. And in terms of how much and how often, what does the research generally suggest for potentially getting those cognitive benefits we talked about?
Based on the studies we've discussed, aiming for around 1 to 2 cups of blueberries per day seems like a reasonable target.
1 to 2 cups daily.
Okay, yeah, that generally aligns with the amounts used in research that has shown improvements in memory or a reduced risk of cognitive decline. And whether you choose fresh, frozen, or even dried blueberries, you'll still be getting those beneficial antioxidants.
What about frozen? Are they just as good? Sometimes they're easier to get.
That's a great point. Yes, frozen are excellent. Interestingly, freezing blueberries can actually help preserve the anthocyanins quite well. Some research suggests they can retain up to 90% even after 6 months in the freezer.
Wow, okay. So no worries grabbing the frozen bag.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And while organic blueberries might have a slightly higher antioxidant content in some studies, maybe 10–15% more,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, both organic and conventional blueberries are definitely nutritious choices. The most important thing is just eating them.
Good to know that frozen are just as beneficial and conventional are still good. That can certainly help with cost and year-round availability. Speaking of which, what's the typical cost, roughly? And are there any tips for making them more accessible if budget is a concern?
Yeah, fresh blueberries can sometimes be a bit more expensive, maybe averaging around $4 to $6 per pound in the U.S., depending on season and location.
Okay.
However, as we mentioned, frozen options are often more affordable, maybe closer to $3 per pound, and they retain their nutritional value really well.
So frozen is a good budget strategy.
Definitely. Also, shopping at farmers markets or local co-ops during their peak season, usually summer, can sometimes offer better prices for fresh ones. And, for those looking for more budget-friendly options consistently, remember other antioxidant-rich berries like strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. They can often be more affordable alternatives and still provide significant health benefits.
That's really helpful advice. It's good to have options. So to bring it all together then, what's the key takeaway here for a listener who's curious about blueberries and their potential to boost brain power? What should they remember from this deep dive?
I think the main takeaway is that the scientific evidence does suggest that blueberries have the potential to offer let's say, a modest but potentially meaningful cognitive boost.
Okay, modest but meaningful.
Yeah, primarily due to their high antioxidant content, especially those anthocyanins we kept mentioning. These compounds appear to play a significant role in protecting the brain from oxidative stress and inflammation.
Which we know contribute to cognitive decline.
Exactly. And the research we looked at seems to support this, showing links to benefits for memory, potentially a reduced risk of dementia, and overall support for brain health with regular consumption.
Right, but with the important caveat.
Exactly. It's crucial to remember that blueberries are most effective when they are part of a well-rounded, healthy diet and an overall healthy lifestyle. That includes regular physical activity, sufficient sleep, and keeping your brain active and engaged.
Yeah.
They aren't a magic pill, unfortunately, but they can be a valuable and, frankly, delicious addition to a proactive approach to taking care of your long-term cognitive well-being.
That's a great summary. And it's encouraging to think that something as simple as adding a handful of blueberries to your day could genuinely contribute to better brain health, especially when we consider the increasing global concern about cognitive decline as populations age.
Yeah, the projections are quite stark.
I saw a figure projected over 115 million people worldwide could be affected by dementia by 2050. So any steps we can take, even simple dietary ones, seem really valuable.
It truly is. Blueberries offer an accessible, enjoyable way to take a positive step towards supporting your brain health. It's one tool in the toolbox.
So for you, our listener, maybe reflect on this. We're curious, have you ever noticed any connection between eating blueberries and your own mental clarity or focus? We always find personal experiences so interesting. And as you continue to explore natural ways to support your health, perhaps consider incorporating these little blue powerhouses into your diet. It could be one of the many positive and tasty choices you make for your brain.